Welcome, welcome. Now, the conversations that we're having in the Marvel universe right now are heavily Fantastic Four, which I get, and which tells you how behind I am in terms of, discourse, conversation, sharing my little 2 cents. But that's not what I want to talk about. I'm actually here because of Ironheart. In the in watching Ironheart, I found myself deeply, deeply just reminiscent of old school shows that I used to watch in high school that introduced me to young Marvels, that introduced me to young Marvel characters, that had the intention of aiming for us as the teenagers, as the young. And I grabbed on really quickly. And I realized, and then there wasn't as much conversation, or I wasn't part of those conversations and those chat spaces about the characters. But now I'm on YouTube, I'm on TikTok, and what has happened is I'm seeing a wildly different reaction, and I'm also seeing a wildly different audience to the shows that are being released. So I felt like today was the day that I wanted to talk about it. So, yes, welcome to my channel. And today the topic is the Young Marvels, then and now. So, in 2017, November, Marvel's Runaway first premiered. In South Africa, it premiered on the CW channel. And the pilot episode was something that grabbed me instantly. It was about six friends who are dealing with the loss of one of their friends. And it's about a year in between the death of their friend and where we are in the first episode. And we watch their different lives, their socio-economic lives. We watch their different racial lives. We watch their different interactions with peers, with parents. We watch with hobbies, school, the things that they love and the things that they feel are their burdens. We really watch them become. And by that first episode, we find ourselves not only being introduced to stereotypes, but then instantly shattering them. Because when we get to the end of the episode, we realize that all these different personalities must come together once again, not just as friends, but as heroes, because their parents are the villains. Already I was set. I loved the plot, I loved the topic, and it was very rich in storytelling, in emotional and character development. So I held on to it. So it ended in 2018 and then came back for a second season in December 2018 and had its final season in December 2019. First of all, can and mind you, all the episodes there was between 10 to 15 episodes per season. So that already gave us a lot of time. Just the time that we had spent over these 3 seasons with these characters. Um, they built so much, and the time that they were given allowed them to grow, allowed them to become, allowed them to develop. So now, when I speak about this show, I bring it up in the conversation with Ironheart. It is one thing. Marvel Runaways is highly diverse, not in a way that it is performative, in a way that is factual. It is a very diverse cast. Racially diverse, sexuality diverse, gender diverse. We are a very open space, and the topics they talk about are very heavy to that. Very heavy on homelessness, on economic gaps, wealth gaps, what it means to be in this privileged bubbles, what it means to embrace your sexuality even when the entire world looks to you and your partner and only sees opposite. And so, when I think about that, Nico and Carolina's relationship was probably my first introduction of a lesbian relationship that was not heavily stereotyped. That did not, first of all, give me two white women, or and it did not leave us in tragedy at the end of it, and it did not make the object of it a phase. You could tell that these were two young kids who were trying to figure out what it means to like someone so opposite from them, so different from them, but still love them and support them and care for them. And we watched Chase and Gert go through the same thing. We're watching this class and this aesthetic difference between these two characters. Chase, who presents himself who was presented very uh, popular boy, the cool kid, and Gert, who is anything but, you know, she's very alternative. She got bangs and purple hair. We know that she's not trying to get the jock, but that's not how their story goes. Their story allows them to interact with each other and find similarity, find love, find care. And on top of that, it's not just a relationship heavy show, it's a very family rich show. These six characters, Nico, Carolina, Gert, Chase, Molly, and Alex, all become family. They find themselves, first of all, homeless by season two, and having to like lean on each other, and trust each other's judgment and decisions in a way that feels like a unity between them. And realizing that I got to watch this show so young and got to learn and experience the lessons that they were trying to teach, lessons on what it means to be supportive, lessons on what it means to be your father's son or your mother's daughter, what it means to be independent even when it is young, even when it is just your voice that you are using for your independence. And it was crucial to me in my upbringing and to me in my nerdishness, and even as it allowed that, it allowed me to also acknowledge conversations that have to be had, the uncomfortability of certain conversations, of certain honesties about ourselves, about other people, the people we care about, the people we idolize. And I am glad that it was released when I was younger, because I don't think that its reception now would even have allowed it to either get 10 episodes to flesh out what was a big cast. You have to remember their parents were also involved. So this was a heavy cast of like 15 people that we all had to be emotionally and mentally invested in. And we were. So I'm so glad that it had come out in that time. But now, when we think about when I was doing the research for this video, I found out that the series had been removed. The series had been removed from Hulu and Disney and other streaming, but it was saying that it was in available for streaming on the CW streaming website. I went on the CW streaming website and it does not stream in my country. So to me, what was a great show and what was a pillar of a before era is just been put to the side and silenced. It's not part of a greater catalog, it's not part of a greater history. There's no monument, memorial, or memory of this show. What they had done was they made a moment and then they put it to the side. And I feel the same had been the tragic end for another show that I had been watching during this era, which was Cloak and Dagger. Now, Cloak and Dagger, just like Marvel Runaways, is a very diverse show in terms of its topic, in terms of its religion, in terms of what its topics were about. And that was very clear, I mean, from the get go. We first have to acknowledge the fact that this show speaks about police violence, police brutality, and against the black minority and black kids, black boys. It's not a topic that people want to acknowledge now. Now it's become this thing that, I mean, a big portion of the world gets angry at witnessing on their screen. And I don't know if it's because it's officially touched too close to home, or it's become this, it only happens to incite this sympathy. But that's not what this show was. Cloak and Dagger was a show about Tandy and Tyrone, and Tandy is Dagger, Tyrone was Cloak. And it first premiered in 2018, concluding in August of the same year, and then its second premiere in 2019 and concluding in May of that year. Now, when even bringing up the dates of their first premiere and their conclusions and their ending is very important to me, because it tells you the difference in what we've been witnessing now. The characters having this time frame allowed us to believe and witness their growth and witness visually these people go from high school to the next years. We're watching a development that we can keep consistent with. And on top of that, they were growing with me. I was going through different years and I was changing as they were changing. There wasn't this jump in which I was 15 and then I was 19, but they're still 15 and then going on 16, or they're going on 17. There was this beautiful space of growth with them. But Cloak and Dagger was about Tandy and Tyrone, who are living two very different socioeconomic worlds. Tandy lives in a trailer park, I think that's what they call them. Trailer parks. She lives with her mother and they struggle. She pickpockets, she steals, she commits crimes. And as a white woman, they it feels like she has this bit of, invisibility to the stereotypes of that. Tyrone, on the other hand, is from a well-off family. Well-off, like they have many private schools, but there's there's a knowledge and there's an acknowledgement that all the privilege in the world cannot save him if he is in front of a cop. There's this harsh reality of his privilege cannot save him from police brutality, and Tandy's whiteness does not save her from poverty. These two instances are not like related, but when they come together, they they have to ask themselves, what is this opposite that I'm across, and why are we linked together? What is our bond together? And what do we need to learn from each other? There's this need for Tyrone is sheltered because of the loss of his brother, the way he went. His parents heavily shelter him, and his interactions with Tandy result in him having to go outside of himself, him having to acknowledge, that he doesn't know outside. He's not very street smart, and she teaches him that. But what he teaches her is innate empathy. He's deeply empathetic, deeply, and he has this, say he wants to be a hero. The concept of a superhero, he wants to be a hero, and he wants to be a hero with a heart, with a purpose, and to help those around him and those that are important to him. And we watch this influence Tandy enough that even in season 2, she picks up this altruism, this need for hope, this need for saving, and she puts that to season two's topic, which then gets us into trafficking, human trafficking, and the trafficking of girls. A topic that I think was so. I remember watching it and I went, this is such a beautiful topic because girls go missing at a rate that people don't acknowledge, that people don't speak about. And this topic, it allowed us to have that awful and heartbreaking conversation that, first of all, homeless kids are invisible. And when they disappear, no one is looking for them. And that's terrifying. And on Tyrone's side, we get introduced to the importance of voodoo, culture, heritage, ancestors, and what that means for the power of being black, of having powers that involve you and connect you to your ancestors. And that was so beautifully done. What broke my heart was that there was no third season, and and the end of season 2, I feel like we had finally watched them become their characters, become Dagger, become Cloak, but also be proud of who they are as Tyrone and Tandy. And just this show alone, I had asked myself while doing this research, what would have been the response to these two shows, to Marvel Runaways and to Cloak and Dagger being released 2 years apart or within the same year? And my first thought was it would have been torn apart. And it would have been torn apart not by the youth, by this weird demographic of older. And when I say older, I'm talking 35 up. I'm not talking about the youngings. I'm talking about these older men with a big platform, big influence, who have somehow found themselves in the teenage space of content. They have found themselves hating what is not made for them, not made for their topic, their narration, their point of views. And it was jarring. It kind of stopped me in my tracks because I went, This was diversity. This was the diversity that everybody has been, screaming from the rooftops that it's being forced onto us, but it had never been forced onto us. It existed. It existed in the comics, and it existed in the shows, and it existed in the kids. It was rich, and it's normal because of the world we live in. The world is far too big of a place for us to all believe that there's just white people, black people, and then other. And white people Christians, black people voodoo, other or other. That's not how this works. They needed, and so thinking about how these two shows would have been received. Carolina and Nico's relationship would have been, I mean, the blonde hair, blue-eyed girly gets with this, I'm so sorry for saying Asian. I'm not sure if she's Japanese or Korean, but this blonde white girl and this Asian girl who holds this goth aesthetic are partners. We watch the black main character of Marvel Runaway hold a lot of weight in terms of the plot. We watch the white lead not hold that much plot, but hold a lot of heart. It's a big part of the heart of this group. And when you think of Cloak and Dagger, like the conversation of police brutality, the conversation of female trafficking, the conversation of homelessness, these are very, and religion, spirituality. There are topics that to the youth and to the curious are rich, and you'll go into them wanting to know more. But this era of who is watching Marvel would not gravitate to it like that. If anything, what would have happened to these two shows is what happened to Miss Marvel and to Ironheart. Now, in it, after WandaVision, I remember watching WandaVision, and I'd hoped that for the sake of creativity's sake, Kevin Feige was not needing or forcing people to heavily involve the continuity of this universe in the plot lines. And it was very clear when we watched WandaVision's first part and second part. The part where they needed to heavily include the continuity of Wanda Maximoff dropped just the creative style and the creative freedom that we had been witnessing in the first half. And I asked myself, is this going to be an issue in the greater, span of the shows? And it does. But in Miss Marvel's case, and specifically in Miss Marvel's case, what happened was it was not an issue of continuity. If anything, the moment Miss Marvel was launched, spoken about, and trailers were dropped, the hatred was visceral, was wild, and was very heavily directed at the main character and her religion. Now, Miss Marvel is about one Kamala Khan, who who gets a bangle that is from her family's lineage, and it gives her powers. And she calls herself Miss Marvel due to her love and adoration of one Carol Danvers Marvel, or Captain Marvel. I The first and only season of Miss Marvel premiered in on the 8th of June 2022, and ended on in July 13th, 2022. It did not have a month, barely a month. It had 6 episodes, which I thought was wild and was very short, but there I go about how the first two shows were able to get these three 2 episodes. So Kamala Khan is Muslim, and she is a Pakistani. And what we witness in her journey is the immigrant, and is the immigrant experience, the Muslim experience, and the experience of being a girl, an awkward teenage girl. If I'm going to be honest, the entire show is for the awkward teenage girl who has no idea if all the fanfic she's writing is logical. That's who she is. At the core of her, at the core of her power, it's this childishness. 'Cause she's 15 years old. Let us all put this. And when I watched the show, I was 21. So I had to put into consideration she is 15 years old. And the one thing that helps this show so much was its animated style. The first few episodes, I think the first 3 episodes, lean heavily into the fact that she is an illustrator. She draws, she writes, she overlays her voice, she does voiceovers. It's so important to the show. And the first 3 episodes are very heavy on this, on the music, on the culture of it. Even her art style incorporates her religious style. And as we watch the show go on, we then get into the religious, and we get into her religion, going to mosques, the difference between mosques, the side of the women and the men, what it means, and how that conveys. But I think my favorite part of the show is when she goes back in time. I had no idea, and I'm saying this as somebody who loves her history. I did not know how India and Pakistan came to be. I did not know about the trains. I did not know about the killings. I did not know about what it truly meant when Indian and Pakistani people have that wall between them, have that bridge between them. And it is a deeply colonial, like, wall. And the show does such good work on involving us in the story, involving us in what it meant to flee home, to flee prosecution, to flee, a country that did not want you. The topics themselves were so important to the period and time that we were having just around the world. What it means to be an immigrant, what it means to leave your country, what it means to leave your country to go to the next door country or to go overseas, to chase a dream, to chase an American dream. And because of that, I had hoped so much that Miss Marvel would have gotten greater reception. Because instead, what happened was we got this intense flood. And it was the first time I'd ever watched a flooding of negative reviews so intense that the show just could not succeed. I think it's the lowest watched show, like in terms of rating and views. And I understand it being a low watched or low rated show because of how Marvel had just flooded all their content because of their Disney Plus contract. But I did not understand how nobody had deeper content and context related things to say about it. Nobody had things to say about how Kamala, her mother, and her grandmother are this beautiful just coming together of just generational love. Kamala, her mother, and her grandmother are the heart of this show. And her great grandmother. It is quite literally about lineage, but there was no topic about that. The topic was about the fact that she was Muslim, the fact that she was a girl, the fact that she was a Muslim girl. It was all that we could talk about. And I found it jarring. And what I found more jarring was none of the kids were talking about it. Nobody my age was talking about it. Not nobody my age, nobody around Kamala's age, between 15 to 21, were not talking about this show. Instead, what was happening was a demographic of men between 30 and 40 were the ones talking about this show. And the same trend seems to carry on when it came to Ironheart. Now, when it comes to Ironheart, I find this specifically difficult in terms of how she had been received because, first of all, Ironheart had no marketing at all. I think Disney was trying to do Aquaman level, just let's just try finish this phase and get it over with because we tried and it was not working. But I when I watched Ironheart, now hear this. If Miss Marvel had its 6 episodes through a month, barely, Ironheart had 3 episodes drop June 24th, 2025, and conclude July 1st, 2025, with the next 3 episodes. There wasn't even a run. There was not one run. And I think there was one trailer, and then they did some marketing, some, social media marketing. But the marketing was not trying to get new people into the seats to watch this new character. Now, Ironheart or Riri Williams. Riri Williams is a, to me, the epitome of young black gifted. That's what she represents, and that's what she came to and into this show as. Coming from Wakanda Forever, I was excited to see how they could introduce her, how they could work around her character. Because to me, the only times I've seen Riri Williams was Wakanda Forever and an episode of What If. And the episode of What If to me broke the boundaries of what we truly can do with this character. She becomes so powerful, she becomes so important. So when I started watching the show, my first thoughts, I remember watching the pilot episode, and my one vice, they say her name too many times. I don't know if it's this belief that none of us want to remember her name, none of us will remember her name. Everybody calls her by her name and surname. Riri Williams. That's how we state her. Fine. When I watched the first episode, the first thing I realized was this looks like an actual city. This looks like they're in an actual place. The same feeling I have when I see Kamala in New Jersey, and when I see her zoom around, I'm like, this is a real place. This is lived in. Riri Williams, her story is that she is a genius, and she's trying to build a suit, an Iron Man suit. But her suit is a first response suit. The goal of it is to ensure that it is first response before first response. And this is at the consequence of experiencing a drive-by shooting that killed her stepfather and one of her best friend, who was Natalie. When when the discourse about Riri Williams came to be, I remember the famous clip of Tony Stark built this in a cave. And, I want to be, it was either Tony Stark built this in a cave or Tony Stark had a lot of money. Do you think he would be Tony Stark without it? But not one person to me spoke about a crucial conversation she has in which somebody asks her, why build the suit? That was my question as well. Because my first thought when I saw her build this iron suit, it drew me back a little, because I was like, I hope we're not doing a thing where we can't allow a dead character to be a legacy in itself. I think Tony Stark is his legacy. He didn't need a Peter Parker. He didn't need Tony Stark is his legacy as is. But so I kept asking myself, what made them decide that this iron, or what made her decide that this iron suit is what she needs to find herself bending and breaking laws to build? And her statement, I could build anything else. I could literally build anything else in the world. But to say I built this suit, that's attention. Her building this suit was not to, say I am here to build a greater legacy than Tony Stark. It was to say I'm building a legacy on what people will give attention to, on what people will draw attention to, and what people will fund. No one is. I can bet you a million that if she had said I would like to build first response, aid shoots or drones or whatever, the funding would not have been as quick as I would like to build an iron suit. Because say what you want to say, but there is nothing as great as somebody making a greater legacy than a great legacy. And that's what everybody wants. It's it's why people try. It's why people try replicate greatness. And I think in her case, replicating greatness is the consequence of knowing that as a young black woman, you cannot just build anything and be anything. You have to build something iconic. You have to build something that draws eyes, draws attention, and draws criticism. And that's exactly what she does. The show itself, I think, is beautiful. I think it suffers from the same situation that Miss Marvel suffers from. The episodes are too, there's not enough episodes, not to flesh out and to allow a greater story to be told. We don't get a greater story. we don't get to sit in, you know, the first of all, the team that she ends up in. We don't get enough of them. We don't. And we also just don't get enough Riri Williams becoming. We get her reacting to a lot of things. She's very reactive. But that aside, I think when I watched Ironheart, I told myself this was a show for me, maybe first year, 18 years old, 18 to 21. This is my show. This is for us. This is for the girls, this is for the nerds, this is for the ambitious. This is for anybody who wants to build something greater than themselves. And it's ambitious. It's so young. She's so cocky. She's so arrogant, and it's something that you can take and you look at with a bit of like a fable warning, where you go, Riri, you are Icarus right now, and your suit is flying far too close to the sun for everybody's comfort. Tone it down, and she will not tone it down. And I love that about her character. Now, what I loved about her character, it seemed the division of the world had somehow found itself dragging the show. The commentary that had been received for Ironheart, positive commentary, was heavily black people. I mean, black people, brown people, very few brown people, but it was very clear that black people were trying to ensure that there was not a disrespect of Riri Williams and blackness when it came to talking about the show. Critique a show on its faults. It's too short. The storytelling sometimes is lacking. The pacing sometimes gets skewed. Certain motivations don't reach or don't conclude in great ways. But her being black and her being a girl is literally the least of the problems in this show. It's not a problem at all. And what happened was, just like Kamala Khan, her blackness and her femaleness and the suit she was building and the disgrace it seemed she's putting to build the suit overshadowed a great story. And because of that, I have to ask myself, who is watching the young Marvels? Who are watching our, young? Because I'm not getting the teen people. I'm not getting the young people making conversations about this. I'm not getting the young people saying, I watched Kamala Khan and my first thought was, oh my gosh, I need to ask my mom if she's okay. I need to ask my mom if her as an immigrant, her as a child of an immigrant, her as a child of somebody who was raised under really oppressed states, um, how she's grown, how she's become, and what it means to be raised by that type of, generational gap. I'm not getting young people going, she's doing fanfic. I'm not getting young people going to Riri Williams saying, I want to be as cocky as she is. I want to be as arrogant as she is. That's not the conversations that are being had. Older people are who are having conversations about these young characters. Older people are who are trying to draw inspiration from these younger characters. And where you can, that's fine. But what's happening is this grift, a word that I'm learning now, which is the need to diminish and demean a character for the concept of, like, on the bounds that they are black, that they are brown, that their religious ideas don't align with you, that the male characters are being put aside. This idea, this belief is and these spaces are where Riri and Kamala are being talked about, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying me because I don't think Marvel recognizes that. I don't think Marvel is recognizing that the kids are no longer in the theaters. The kids are no longer in the theaters. We are, the older generation are. And you guys, and I think they tried their best in terms of protecting Dominique Thorne, who plays Riri Williams. Watching Robert Downey Jr. give her a full on-screen shout out while she was on this press tour, I knew instantly. I was like, they're trying their best to make sure that she doesn't feel the full brunt of a fandom of racism. And that's so scary that they needed to get Tony Stark himself, Robert Downey Jr. himself, to have a conversation and to make this announcement that he loves Ironheart, that he supports it and he supports the legacy that she's trying to enter and that she's trying to build for herself. It told me that Marvel is aware, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to. They don't know how to. First of all, cut the grifting. They don't know what to. I think Fantastic Four is them trying their best. Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts is them going, you know what? It's very clear that we can't force diversity. But we also can't force you, the people who hate diversity, to love our shows and our movies. So all we can do now is do our best. But I think they're really struggling. They're really struggling with the young audience to say, this is a show for you. This is a show that we are releasing to say that we, as the older nerds, want to give you a baton, give you something that says, this is great. I think when I think about it, Kamala Khan and Peter Parker are in one bubble of just this joyful teenness, but no one is giving Kamala Khan the space to be a teenager and to speak to teenagers. And I think what's worse is the actress that plays her is deeply invested in this universe, but they're not catering to these kids. They're not trying to cater to the youth. I don't think people 13 to 18 are watching Miss Marvel. They're not watching Ironheart. They're watching Thunderbolts. They're watching Fantastic Four. And that's just it's become a disruption because the people who are watching these shows are not the prime audience. And on top of that, the criticism is not giving it's not it doesn't have hold weight. And I hope that as they try build into these new phases, as they slow down the role of all these shows and movies and start interacting with their fans, interacting with the younger fans. Fandoms need younger fans, and they're struggling really hard right now. And Marvel will find themselves in a place where they don't have the youth, and when they don't have the youth, they're going to struggle in terms of, are we still family friendly, or are we now catering to 25 and up, 23 and up? Is that what we're doing now? So I really hope that, first of all, the new people give the old shows a chance. I mean, giving Marvel's Runaway and Cloak and Dagger a chance, I think is so important. But giving Ironheart and giving Miss Marvel a chance are just as important. These four shows exist to feed the young soul, to feed the young curiosity. And without it, it's going to be a miss. And we're going to find ourselves in doomsdays and secret wars with old audiences and no young to carry batons and no young to say, we are now sharing this with you. And I really hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And grifters, leave it alone if you don't want it. It's okay to not want it. I did not watch Oppenheimer. I'm okay with not dragging Oppenheimer. Do not watch Ironheart. Do not watch Miss Marvel. Do not watch Runaways or Cloak and Dagger if you feel that what you are witnessing to you is otherness. Thank you.